So one of the amazing things you just said was less ammonia in the environment. I don't know if you've read many of the studies, but it's incredible how badly that affects or negatively affects the animal's health, well-being, ability to function, like you said, get to market weight, all of those key things. Because think about it, if you were stuck in an environment where you were breathing poor quality air, that's half your life right there is that exchange, that gas exchange, and how important it is. There was
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there were some incredible studies on poultry specifically. I have not read many on ruminants or cows milking or meat otherwise, but maybe could you talk a little bit more on just that one piece?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Think about ammonia is a gas that settles. So they're breathing in the environment where the gas settles. So if you look at swine, poultry, or other sort of more ground feeding animals, for the most part, bovine can at least raise their heads a little bit above that line, but still they're immersed in that space. When you can reduce the ppm of the ammonia in the barn environment, and like Canada's standards is they want it to be at least down to 25 ppm. And at 25 ppm, animals can still suffer from lesions and respiratory distress, and that stress leads to cortisol. Cortisol can inhibit their digestion and their uptake. It's a cascading thing. So if you can reduce the ammonia in those barn systems, you have less stress that those animals are living, there's less stress on the animal. They're living happier, healthier lives. And they produce a better quality meat. If they're digesting properly, they're taking in the proper nutrients. All those things compound and improve the product, but also the journey that those animals have in their lives. So there's definitely been a huge increase in the productivity in those environments commercially, the quality of life of the animals, of the people working there, because they're also impacted by a highly gaseous area and being in a confined space. And as you mentioned, if they're not pasture raised or don't have the opportunity to be pasture raised, they have no access to humic and fulvic as part of their diet, which they would normally in the wild or at least in a pasture raised environment. They don't have access to that, then they're not going to have, you have to supplement it. And it's the same thing with people. When our food is not grown in rich, healthy soil, we don't have access to fulvic acid. Fulvic acid does the same thing for the human body as it does for animals, as it does for plants. Its role is a chelator. So it is going to pick up nutrients and help your body digest it. It allows for those nutrients to pass through cell walls and tissue walls a lot easier. So it's really beneficial in the livestock space because you can improve the overall health of those animals and produce a better quality product in the end. And it should cost the farmers a little bit less because they're not only able to utilize a little bit less, there's less waste in the food, in the feed that they're producing or providing to those animals. But as I mentioned, their manure becomes a part of their system because very rarely will you find a cattle farm or any livestock farm that isn't trying to produce some of their own feed and feedstock. So being able to support that is something that's become sort of a big part of what our initiative is.
Leah, are you seeing it used almost exclusively as a feed additive in livestock production, or are people using it as a spray for bedding or just on compost or anything like that?
It depends on how pioneering the farm is. There are lots of studies that are coming out on livestock because it's obviously it's an industry that's heavily invested in for R&D and research. Not so much on the companion or hobby side of animal health. But we are seeing that there's a lot more in that vein in terms of feedlot efficiencies, weaning as well. It's another big area is maintaining the young livestock health as they're weaning. There's a period called scour, which is basically diarrhea. It's a transition from mother's milk onto their grain diets. And there's that period of time, the longer it is, the more their body weight goes down. So overall health, even through that phase, is becoming more and more apparent. And so you're seeing a greater adoption I see. But sometimes the way into working with some of these farms is to work on their field, show them that humic and fulvic can have a real impact in the grain and whatever they're raising, whatever the crop they're raising for those livestock, and then work our way in the other way. So it works in tandem for the most part, but a lot of times, we're trying to help with the animal health because it's a big concern. It's a huge investment for these types of farms. And it's you'll see it sort of either way.